Ayan na. Kamusta kayo dyan? Merry Christmas sa inyong lahat sa ating mga followers from all around the world. Ayan na. I hope you had a wonderful time, wonderful moment with your loved ones kung saan man kayo sa buong mundo. Whether sa, ito favorite ng mga tao yan, gitnang silangan, whether sa Europe, whether sa Quezon City or sa Solid North. And of course, kasama yung mga kasama natin dyan, minamahal natin dyan, mga ka-solid South team natin dyan. Alright, shoutout sa mga followers natin sa Davao, among other places. Thank you so much guys for a wonderful year together. In a way, parang medyo magkapamilya na rin tayo. At least at the intellectual level, at the political level, and to a certain degree, of course, almost every day na tayo, diba? With the exception of course, of Sabbath days, some of the important days, and obviously over the past 2 days or so, medyo sabi natin, in observance of the sacred nature of the Christmas and the immediate after, sabi natin. Break muna tayo ng konti sa politics. Kaya yung mga pinapost po natin ay either family-oriented. And thank you so much, of course, guys, for your greetings to dad. I mean, as you know, guys, naman, of course, my dad hasn't been, his best for years. But he has done his best, no, to be as strong and for us. So thank you so much for all your prayers and love. And sa atin naman, a lot of my strength, inspiration, and all comes from my parents, comes from my late Lola. Obviously, as we grieve for Lola, we're also trying to honor her legacy. So thank you so much, guys, for being with us through and through sa lahat ng mga bagay-bagay. Now, obviously, of course, I'm still a very private person as much as possible, and I hope people respect yung privacy natin as much as possible. But at the same time, of course, may glimpses naman tayo ng ating mga value systems, family values. So for me, family is extremely, extremely important, guys. No, um, and obviously also it's very important to know when there's a time for work, there's time for politics, there's a time for war, but there's also time for peace, there's time for family, there's time for reflection. So I hope you guys are making the most out of itong mga holidays natin bagong before we plunge into 2025, which is going to be an extremely, extremely busy year. Actually, as we speak, I'm going through invitations, for speaking engagements and all, with the ASEAN summits and all starting, with other major events starting. So eto na, I'm putting on my hats. So there are a couple of big meetings in ASEAN summit coming next year, including among economics experts and economic opinion leaders. So shout out dyan sa ASEAN. Thank you so much for your invitation to attend the ASEAN Economic Opinion Leaders. So thank you so much for at least recognizing that, because I think some folks in uh, in the Philippines forget that a couple of my works have been about economics, including my first book. No, um, so economics, economic policy, industrial policy, semiconductors, ito yung mga issue na malapit sa puso natin, and I've been writing about them, and a couple of journal articles and some more serious stuff are still in the pipelines. Shout out also sa mga kasama natin sa Singapore. Hopefully visit also Singapore soon for another high level also meeting events with the double I double S related events, and some of our friends from the European Union among others. Yes, of course. As you know, guys, maybe I'll have to go back to the US also soon with the new administration coming in. It just happens that some of the people we interviewed, including on this show, guys, so it's official. Elbridge Colby, the person who we interviewed on this show, dito sa Deep Dive, in addition to my television show, The View from Manila, is now officially the number two, or the Undersecretary for Policy sa Pentagon, the world's most powerful military. So proud na proud po tayo, for getting a full range of opinions, because also on this show we had people like Dr. Walden Belly, among others, who are extremely critical of the United States and the negative role it has played all around the world. So that's the diversity, that's the world class, that's the range we bring dito sa show natin. And again, if not for your support, guys, I don't think we would have been able to sustain this, to be honest, guys, to be honest. Now, moving forward, literally moving forward, pag-usapan natin, guys, what is the shape of things to come in 2025? Well, obviously, the shape of things to come in 2025 has a lot to do with what happened in 2024. No, So today, pag-usapan natin guys, who are the biggest political winners and biggest political losers of 2024. When I say biggest winners and losers, that doesn't mean tapos ng laban, right? Tuloy-tuloy yung laban. Actually, tonight we were supposed to have a conversation with si Ronald and Mark Gamboa, RM, pero mukhang ma-postpone natin to tomorrow. I won't say much, but maybe Ronald can tell us soon. Medyo may important conversations going on. I'll not say more. So, as we speak, a lot of important conversations are going on about what could happen next year. All right. So, yun ang pag-usapan natin, guys. No, yun ang pag-usapan natin. And obviously, guys, thank you so much again for your support and thank you so much for your constructive comments. Kasi, one of the things that minsan nakakairita talaga dito sa mga ginagawa natin is that, I mean, ang hirap talaga pag fanatics ang katapat mo eh. If you don't want to agree with facts, if you don't want to agree with proper analysis, if you don't want to agree with social scientific analysis and all, okay lang naman sa akin eh. Hindi naman kailangan mag-insulto tayo. 'Di ba? Over the past 48 hours, Diyos ko naman mga tao, pumili naman kayo ng oras. Christmas na Christmas, nagtotroll pa kayo sa akin. Tas kung anong mga kabastusan ang sasabihin nyo. Guys, come on. Come on. Let's have a little bit of decency, right? So either mga bayaran to mga to or mga walang yung mga tao. Hindi ko na lang pinatulan. Sabi ko, hindi, these are sacred moments. Wag na natin pag-usapan. But, it's just crazy how fanatic people are. How fanatic people are. And believe me or not, hindi ko naman sinasabi ng ibang tao dyan. Actually, it's not easy what we're doing here, right? In addition to problems we have to deal with in our private life, mahirap to be in public nowadays because you're gonna be at the receiving end of so much hatred, so much attack, so much calumny. And so you have to have a you have to have a thick skin, no? And you have to develop immunity to that. But at the same time, of course, minsan syempre mapapaisip ka rin, no? How to get the message across in a way na ma-appreciate ng tao para magkaroon naman ng kalinawagan, para mamulat yung mga ating mga kababayan, di ba? Kasi minsan talaga mahirap eh pag fanatic talaga ang approach ng tao. But having said that, we have to talk about what we have to talk about. So, love it or hate it, these are for me the big winners and losers of 2024, and this will more or less lay things out for next year, right? Next year is gonna be crazy. I can already see, grabe, ang dami ng mga trolls ngayon. Ang dami ng mga fake accounts, locked accounts. And the reality is that when a lot of trolls attack you, it actually creates a kind of a snowball effect. So minsan yung mga totoong fanatic din at mga totoong mga walang yang tao ay nakikisakay na rin, diba? So it's incredible that ang dami palang pera for trolls and troll farms. Ang daming pera talaga. So, hindi ko sinasabi sa confidential fund galing yan. Hindi ko sinasabi galing sa China yan. Hindi ko sinasabi yan. Ang sinasabi ko lang parang nakapagtataka, ang dami talagang pera. Because it looks like these are coordinated attacks and mga other things. Pero hindi ko na pinatulan kasi, we're in a holidays. Holy days, diba? Holy days. Now, okay. Let me start from the other side kasi baka atake na naman tayo. No, I mean, I don't care. But, no. So when I say biggest losers and winners, you're talking about a couple of things. Now, number one, you're talking about numbers. You're looking at surveys. You're looking at trend lines in the surveys. You're looking at the actual data in terms of approval rating, trust ratings. You're looking at the base. You look at where you end up. And then, of course, you're also looking at political capital in terms of whether may appeal ka across the political spectrum. So from where you started in end of 2023, by the end of 2024, mas gumanda ba? Mas lumaki pa yung base mo? Mas dumami pang napapabilif sa'yo, yung mga hindi believe sa'yo dati? Or mas kumonte, diba? So you're looking at also political capital. And then third, also in terms of long-term prospects. Are people talking about you as a future presidential, future vice presidential, as a major leader? So yun yung mga criteria po na ginagamit natin when we talk about the biggest winners and losers. Now, let me first of all start with this. I did not put BBM in either the biggest losers or winners, as you may have heard dun sa big story analysis natin together with Sir Ronald Llamas. I suggest you guys check it. For me, BBM was just the biggest survivor, right? That's the most neutral way I can put it. Because if you look at it, pagdating kay BBM, his numbers are not ideal, like 48% approval rating, 45% trust rating. That's really, really low compared to Pinoy, compared to Tigong, etc. at this stage in their presidency. Ipopost ko mamaya sa baba. Makikita niyo yung graph dito. So you'll see a comparison between, for instance, where BBM stands versus his predecessors. But at the same time, at least in the case of BBM, hindi natin nakita yung complete hemorrhaging of his support base. So he has still around majority or close to majority support base. And his total disapproval is around quarter of the voters. Now, the reason this is important is because some people were saying that pagdating kay BBM, the 60% that voted for him, a huge part of that will turn on him, and then i-plus mo pa yung mga pink or mga dilaw at yung mga iba na galit sa kanya. So in that sense, you would have expected his numbers to collapse or hemorrhage to 20-30%. But we're not seeing that happening. And a huge part of the collapse of Marcos' numbers is really among A, Mindanao, and B, E, poorest of the poor Filipinos. And I think the two actually converge because pag tinignan mo yan mga kameta, marami sa ating mga pinakamahirap na kababayan ay nasa Mindanao. And at the same time, and this is where we have to be substantive, no? Dapat data-driven tayo. For the past 2 years, consistent naman ang ating mga voters na sinasabi na hindi sila natutuwa sa kalagayan ng ating ekonomiya. Pagdating sa presyo ng mga bilihin, napakamahal ang mga presyo ng mga bilihin para sa ating kababayan. So even if bumaba yung inflation, when you say bumaba ang inflation, di ibig sabihin bumaba yung presyo. Ang ibig sabihin lang niya, bumaba yung pagtaas ng presyo ng mga bilihin, right? So it's the decline in the increase in prices, right? It's not the decline in prices per se, right? So in that sense, unsurprising na Marcos is not doing very well in terms of his overall numbers. But considering what BBM has been up to, meaning January pa lang, Digong coming out, guns blazing, punching right and left, Mindanao separation, cocaine addict at the accusations, all of those things. Rumors daw of instability in civil-military relations, mga kibuloy, tapos mga people power, tapos yung isang religious group daw na medyo ganun. Like, when you consider all of those things, BBM having close to 50% approval and just over 20% disapproval, right? That's not the worst that could happen to a president like BBM. Considering he's against the Duterte family, considering he alienated huge number of folks in Solid South, particularly in Mindanao, na sobrang pro Duterte. Considering na he has been seen as a weak leader or diffident or indecisive leader. In fact, if anything, BBM is a survivor because he was also able to expand his base. Now, alam ko walang masyadong umaamin, but at least you have some people like Senator Trillanes openly talking about a grand coalition, right? You have some people like Senator Kiko Pangilinan, well, not openly declaring it, but somehow, signaling that there could be some sort of tactical grand coalition, if not strategic grand coalition, meaning siguro for 2025, meaning siguro at least on the Duterte question, EJK question, on the West Philippines question, baka magkaroon tayo ng overlap and to a certain degree, kumbaga, united front, if I can even use that term, at least temporarily. So I would say BBM was the biggest survivor of the year. So it's a very neutral term. It's a neutral term. But in a way, you could say it's also a sign of quote-unquote resilience, which is not the worst thing in the world. But I won't put BBM as a winner of the year. I don't think he belongs in the category of winners because as we speak, ang laki din ng galit ng tao pagdating sa issue ng budget, pagdating sa allegations of billions of dollars of ayuda fund na ano daw naman talaga, na pork barrel daw talaga, although dinideny ng DSWD yan. Of course, yung mga issue at saka yung mga kababalakan pagdating sa PhilHealth fund transfers, pagdating sa zero budget issue sa PhilHealth, pagdating sa, for instance, you're looking at things like reduction dun sa budget ng Department of Education or sa DND, for instance. So, and he put all of those things, BBM, survivor. I'll put him in that category. Now, so what about the other side of the equation? Who are the winners and the losers here? Now, if you look at it, and this is, guys, again, please, if you don't agree with facts, problema mo na yan. But if you look at it, Sara Duterte a year ago, more than a year ago, was seen at least as a front runner to be the next president, right? Was seen absolutely as a front runner to be the next president. Although that's not true. Because yung mga alam kong survey, last year pa lang ng fourth quarter ng last year pa lang, 2023, Sara was already no longer in a pole position, right? Statistically tied or even behind. But anyway, Sara still started as at least the second most powerful figure, and the Duterte started as the second most powerful dynasty in the Philippines, right? Some would even say the real power behind the throne, or potentially the power behind the throne. So, considering yun yung starting point mo, right? And then, nasaan si Sara ngayon with barely 50% approval rating. Again, guys, don't get mad at me. These are the numbers. I showed it to you. I can post it there. All right? Don't show me mumbo jumbo service. Paul Seychelles are the closest, best service you can have, right? As far as scientific surveys are concerned. And please, don't, mag-Google Trends na naman tayo after. Now, going back to this, Sara Duterte lost 20 points in Visayas and lost what 13 points in Mindanao and 10 points across the country just in the last quarter from September to December, right? And then if you look at it, Sara was what 70, 80% a year or two ago. Now she's barely 50%. And if you look at net approval rating, if her approval is 50% and her disapproval is close to 30%, she barely has above 20% net approval rating, which is what? 50, 60, 70% lower than her dad at the comparable period, and even lower than Pinoy and Binay. And I would say at some point probably comparable to Leni's numbers. But remember, Leni was an extremely isolated, marginalized vice president, right? And we'll talk about Leni very shortly because I think she was the comeback queen of 2024, and I'll discuss that shortly. Again, if you don't agree with the facts, problema na yan. But I'm talking about the facts here, right? Now, the thing is 2025 could also become very challenging for Sara. So now that Sara has really plateaued in terms of her numbers. Nakikita natin na nakakaroon ng fracturing even in solid south, right? Double-digit declines in Mindanao, in Visayas, right? Barely majority approval rating, barely a quarter net approval rating. These are not good numbers. Sara Duterte is not, wala siyang Teflon effect katulad ni Digong. As I always said, poor copy siya ni Digong. And Digong to begin with was a very problematic political figure, but at least Digong had spontaneity, wit, pinag-usapan natin lahat ng mga yan, no? And most importantly, Digong had the fear factor because he was the president, he had the narco politician list, he had all of the. Sara doesn't have any of those levers. And as Lele Claudius said on this show, among others, unfortunately, there's also the element of misogyny, right? So pag sinama mo lahat ng mga yan, yes, you could say, considering where Sara started and then where she's ending the year, and then if you look at it in 2025, she could indeed face impeachment. I know as we are talking right now, there's still serious conversation about impeachment plan against her. Even if hindi mangyari yan, she is still going to be bogged down right and left, right? And as far as supporters of Sara Duterte, yung mga senatorial slate are concerned, only Bongo is doing well. We'll discuss this SWS service very shortly, right? So, pagdating dito, guys, ayan, wait lang ah. Ayan. Ayan, mga loser na naman dyan. Yan ang sinasabi ko sa'yo, guys. Actually, guys, you have to really believe in what you say, and at the same time, you really have to have strength of conviction. Kasi talagang minsan mapapaganyan ka talaga, di ba? Anyway, going back to this, guys. Going back to this, guys. So yeah, and actually that also tells you na despite all of itong mga low life trolling, all of yung mga bayaran trolls and everything they have been doing, despite all of those things, guys, right? It looks like nahihirapan talaga ang Team DDS heading into 2025, right? It's going to be a very challenging one. As I said, only Bongo seems to be in a semi-safe position in terms of retaining his seat in the Senate heading into next year's elections. Alanganin lahat. Alanganin lahat. In fact, nung pag tinignan mo yung buong Team DDS, right? Yung complete senatorial slate nila, to be honest, may mga tatlo or apat dyan, parang sino ba tong mga to, di ba? So if you look at the SWS survey, guys, Bongo is in top 5 that's quite impressive considering everything. Although mas lower siya dun sa mga ibang surveys na kita natin in the past. And he's not doing as well in Pulse Asia. But Bato, medyo alanganin si Bato. And to think Bato is at least the second most powerful or most popular figure within the DDS camp, right? And then yung mga ibang nasa team DDS, I'm talking about, the 2025 slate. Not competitive at all. Not competitive at all. So let me just look at some of the numbers here. So this is not only about Sara, no? This is about the whole slate. So SWS just confirmed na yung na-leak na survey na was commissioned by Strat-based ADR was actually true. Actually guys, interesting. Meron din pala tayong party list pala. Although ang hirap yung party list kasi proportional voting yan. But let me go to the senatorial slate, no? What's interesting with the SWS survey compared to the Pulse Asia survey is that all of the candidates have a far lower preference rating. So number one, um, pag-usapan natin yan, Tulfo, pero at number 3 to 4 is Bong Revilla. So Bong Revilla is number 2, Bongo is number 3, although tied siya effectively with Cayetano, and not too far away from Soto and Ben Tulfo, Bitag, right? Pero kung titignan mo dito, si De La Rosa, he only has a 21% preference rating, right? Which is statistically tied with Kiko Pangilinan at 20%, who's ranked number 15, right? Bam Aquino has a 17% preference rating sa SWS survey. So that means actually with a 3 to 5% margin of error, like Bato is basically as competitive as Kiko and Bam Aquino, right? So that tells you, on one hand, obviously, in fairness, may chance talaga si Bam Aquino and definitely may chance talaga si Kiko Pangilinan. But at the same time, that also tells you how low the Dutertes or the Duterte slate has gone from where they were expected to be. If someone asks you about the future of Team DDS come 2025, so that's a huge drop for them, right? And then sino bang mga iba? Mark Oleta only has 6% preference rating, way outside. So for you to be competitive, you have to have at least around 20 to 21% preference rating. Mark Oleta is only at 6%, right? Philip Salvador is only at 10%, right? Admin to ngayon, pero dati kay, tas minsan may pagka-abante, atras-abante. Si Tolentino, dating Ronald Llamas ni Digong, is only at 14%, although admin siya technically speaking. Akala ko si Busita na yung vlogger. Pala, ito pa yung one rider. In the end, ito, Team DDS. And then you have to go all the way to the second page. Jimmy Bondok, 3% lang yung kanyang preference rating. Sobrang layo. Sino ba itong mga to? Actually, mas mataas ang preference rating ni Ma'am Franz Castro kay Jimmy Bondok. Diba? And then, is Kerobin with them? Although independent siya, no? In fairness, si Ma'am Heidi Mendoza is higher than a couple of other people in the Team DDS. Kiboloy, where's Kiboloy here? Well, parang wala pang 1%, si Kiboloy. Ay, hindi. Si Kiboloy, 2%. 2% si Kiboloy. 2%. Oy, laki 2%, Talo si Sir Ronald Llamas. So anyway, that tells you na, like Philip Salvador, Mark Oleta, Kiboloy, Bondok. I mean, they're like way out of the competitive circle, right? As I said, to be competitive, you have to be close to 20%. These guys are like 10% and below, all the way to just 2% in the case of Kiboloy, right? So, I don't know, that tells you medyo talaga mahina talaga ang team DDS heading into these elections, right? And I'm not even talking about machinery organization yet kasi hindi pa nagsimula yung election proper where talagang makikita natin ang epekto ng machine, right? So that's where you're gonna see those who are closer to the administration, whether officially or not, they're gonna benefit a lot from that. And some would say there's a chance for 5 points to 10 points bump if you're part of the admin slate. So that tells you that actually Team DDS is coming to 2025 in a very, very vulnerable position, way weaker than they would have expected. And then they're in no position to go head to head with the administration. If anything, genuine opposition folks like Kiko Pangilinan and Bama Aquino are almost doing just as well as Bato. And Franz Castro from Makabayan is doing better than Jimmy Bondok and Kiboloy and some of the other folks in the DDS camp. So this is an interesting setup we're looking at, guys. Now, sino naman ang mga winners? Now, obviously, I put the Tulfos as the biggest winner of 2024 because, guys, just look at the numbers. It's incredible. Erwin Tulfo has consistently remained as number one in, so 45% sa SWS, but close to like 65% I think was like in Pulse Asia, sobrang taas siya. Number one pa rin siya doon. Ben Tulfo was almost tied as second doon sa Pulse Asia, dito sa top 5-ish, 5, 6-ish. So anyways, if you look at it, the two Tulfo brothers are almost 100% sure to make it to the Senate. But obviously, that's not really the survey I'm looking at per se to make a judgment about the Tulfos. For me, you see Rafi Tulfo is really the biggest winner. If you look at it, Rafi Tulfo is now leading Sara Duterte in practically all major pre-election surveys, pre-2028 election surveys, SWS, Okta, and Pulse Asia. In some of them, it's much bigger than the rest. The rest, I get confidential information also. The surveys are forwarded to me. May mga privately commissioned one na forward sa atin. So nakikita ko yan. So actually, in some of them, medyo healthy na yung lead ni Rafi Tulfo kay Sara Duterte. So essentially 2024 was a year na tapos na yung pagka parang this idea of inevitability of Sara Duterte. So at once nawala yung inevitability ng kanyang presidency, at the same time even her vice presidency is now in question, not to mention she lost the Department of Education. She had to essentially forego and all the resources and privileges and prestige that comes with that office. So she literally also had to go let go of something big. So in that sense, interesting yan. Now, but where does Rafi Tulfo stand on things? This is where it's really interesting. So I already had one interview with him on the record. Obviously, I have conversation with different, folks in the government, different senators off the record, etc. My sense is Rafi Tulfo is still navigating his position. I think Rafi Tulfo is still trying to, navigate it in ways whereby he could be in a position to build the biggest coalition from the center, the median voter, kumbaga, come 2028. So he's already building that momentum. As I said, he's so much navigating the field. Kasi pansin niyo, halos wala siyang sinasabi ukol kay Sara issue. Sobrang tahimik siya. He's keeping a strategic, healthy distance from it. Focus siya dun sa kanyang, Cynthia Villar exposes, among other things. And doing the Rafi Tulfo thing, the everyday, idol Rafi Tulfo thing, right? And it seems to be working very well for him, like extremely well for him. And so much so that now people from different sites talk about either a Tulfo, Martin Romualdez set combination backed by BBM come 2028. So that's a scenario whereby hindi ma-impeach si Sara and Sara remains competitive and Sara decides to run. So three things. Walang impeachment or disqualification. B, Sara is competitive. And C, Sara will run for 2020. In that case, people are looking at a situation where BBM will support, let's say, a kind of a Martin Romualdez and Tulfo kind of combination. I just don't see how, honestly, Mr. 1% can justify Tulfo not running. And that's But what's interesting is that at the same time, I'm also hearing about a kind of a Tulfo Risa Hontiveros combination, right? So that's the range that Rafi Tulfo. Hindi si Ben Tulfo, I'm talking about Rafi Tulfo because yes, there's a Tulfo brand, but each of the brothers bring a certain variation on the theme. And sometimes, even if you have an issue with the theme, the variation means something. Right? I don't need to go into Hegelian dialectics of the universal and the specific manifestation and all of that. But, right, in a sense, Rafi Tulfo has positioned himself in a way, like for instance, he's active on International Labor Organization issues. So may pagka-progressive ganyan. So, and then, he's exposing, some issues na binabangga niya yung mga malalaking land grabber. Land elite. Landed elite. So, that puts him in a good position dealing with the left, right? So let's just call it Peronismo, right? So Juan Peron in Argentina back in the day was able to do that, right? So he had the labor union side at the same. He had like a military side. Tulfo doesn't have the military side, but obviously he has the kind of a macho, kind of a populist side. But obviously he has also this kind of a left side, maybe even potentially appealing to labor union or progressive side, right? So medyo mabango na si Rafi Tulfo. Good morning. We can talk about no, but as far as Rafi Tulfo is concerned, I think he's very ably, you know, hedging his bets, if I can put it that way. So he's in a sweet spot. He's in a sweet spot. But if I'm Rafi Tulfo, I'll have to do knock on the wood because you never know. You never know. And the other big thing here is may pera ba siya to run a presidential campaign. Generally for me, the question of money is how should I put it? Kasi sa akin palagay, kung mataas ka sa surveys, ang daming gusto mag-sponsor sa'yo. Alam natin yan eh. Tsaka yung mga oligarchs, yung mga malalaking billionaires. Pag mataas ka sa surveys, tataya yung mga yan sa'yo eh. So I don't necessarily buy yung argument na Rafi wouldn't have enough money to run on his own. I think if he sustains his momentum, maraming mga malalaking pangalan at mga pamilya ay magsusupport sa kanya. Let's just hope not too much of it because we want him to be as independent as possible, just in case if he's the only alternative to you know what, right? But having said that, a lot remains to be seen. Probably next year, next year, interview natin ulit si Senator Tulfo. Let's try to learn more about, although alam ko medyo ano siya ngayon, syempre ingat din siya. So let's see. But I'm observing. I'm observing very closely how is he positioning. So far, suave. I think politically speaking, very suave yung ginagawa niya. But things would get interesting once next year we have three Tulfos in the Senate, right? And then of course I can go eye roll about the quality of Senate and all of that. Now, but I mentioned Risa Hontiveros kanina. For me, Risa Hontiveros is also the break, a kind of a big winner last year. But I put her in the category of the breakout star, right? Because if you look at it, and this has to do with something with the next person I'll talk about, Leni. It's not like we're seeing a significant jump in her numbers in the sense that she's inevitably being seen as, like the next, kumbaga, susunod na pangbato ng opposition or susunod na presidential ball. Not necessarily. Or at least I don't see that in numbers yet. But is she in the conversation for vice presidency? Absolutely. Is she somehow in the conversation for the presidency? Yes, to a certain degree. But I think in terms of making her palatable to a wide spectrum of Filipino voters, and particularly the median voter Filipino na medyo conservative. Because let's not forget, social democratic si Risa Hontiveros, right? Social democratic meaning, naniwala siya sa democracy, naniwala siya sa parliamentary system, naniwala siya sa reforma, pero medyo mas progressive siya sa mga socio-economic issues, right? Siguro mas progressive, mas to the left of a median Filipino voters. I think in terms of making herself more palatable to the median Filipino voters, she has come a long, long way. Marami akong kilala na conservative na Filipino. So sobrang conservative na talagang pro-Trump Netanyahu type of people na si Risa gusto nila. And kung sasabihin, but isn't Risa supposed to be woke or something like that? No. Gusto ko matapang siya eh. Gusto ko palaban siya eh. Gusto ko, lumalaban siya sa China, sa Pogo, sa Kibolo, yung mga ganon. So, for me, interesting, right? And in a way, nakita natin, pagdating sa Senado, no offense to the Senate, there's Risa Hontiveros' level of Senate hearings and interpolation, and then there's the rest of the Senate, no offense, right? Spaghetti pababa, right? So essentially, siya lang yung nagdala ng dangal ng Senado. When we talk about our traditional understanding of Senate as a kind of Senadum, right? Like, the Roman level of Senate, Senate of the people, like high level discussions, palaban and all of that. So I think, in that sense, Risa Hontiveros was really the breakout star of 2024. Now, whether she can sustain it enough for the next 3 years or she can push it to the next level for the next 3 years, mahabang usapan yan. There's some people are very skeptical about it. There's some people are saying, who knows? And then there's a part of me that thinks, actually, pwede yan. Because if 2-3 years ago someone told you that Risa would be in the position she's in today, but I don't think so. So she has come a long way. So what should stop her from going to the next level? And this brings me to the last major figure I want to talk for the year, because there's so many figures na pwede natin pag-usapan in terms of political courage, because I mean, there are many other breakout stars. Congresswoman Luis Ro, a couple of Congressman Zia, a couple of other Dan Fernandez, okay, like a couple of other guys Quadcom, among others. I think they were breakout stars, right? Um, there were a lot of really uh, commendable interventions by really courageous people, whether it's, you know, Leila de Lima, Sara de Lima, Senator Trillanes, whether it's Franz Castro. I think they also. So there are many honorable mentions we can put there, definitely. But I would definitely say Risa Hontiveros was the breakout star of the year. Can she sustain it for next year? Pag-usapan natin yan sa mga susunod na episodes. And then let's go to Leni Robredo. And this part is very, very important. This part is very, very important. Now, remember I said something about isa sa pinakamahirap na trabaho ng mga katulad natin is you're always gonna take a heat from multiple sides. Sometimes very unfair, sometimes very vicious, and sometimes very unexpected. If you truly take an independent stance, meaning independent, meaning you take things based on on a kind of a consistent rubric of what you expect from a leader, right? Now, yung mga ka-DDS na galit sa atin, hindi ko kasalanan na si Leni ay walang confidential fund, na malinis siya, na maayos siya, na accountable siya, na COA kept on like 4 times her office as the OVP was the most accountable of. Hindi ko kasalanan yon. So, she has to get the credit for that, alright? Galit kayo na malinis siya, may problema talaga tayo mga kameta, di ba? So, you have to give credit due. At the same time, of course, alam ko marami nagagalit sa atin, naiinis sa atin because, I was not totally sold on some of the communication strategy, on the timing, on the tenure, whatever. There were a couple of issues I found dun sa 2022 campaign, but nevertheless, in fairness, like from 3 to 5% to what, almost quarter of votes, that's a huge jump for Leni Robredo back in the day. But at the same time, again, marami na naman nagalit sa akin because after election, sabi ko, sayang naman hindi na-sustain yung mobilization ng Pink Movement. Ano nangyari sa Pink Movement? Meron ba tayong registry? Nasaan yung mga volunteers? Ang mga volunteers naman, may chapters pa yan. Yung mga chapters na ba yan? Mobilizable ba yan? Nasaan yung mga yan? Meron ba silang consistent activities? Meron ba tayong town hall meetings? Meron bang, meron bang mga party movements? Kilusan? Anong pinag-usapan natin? So obviously, marami naman nagalit sa atin for asking those questions. And that's where I realized, kulang talaga tayo sa political maturity. Because these are legitimate questions. These are legitimate questions. Pag sinasanto natin yung mga politiko, may problema talaga tayo. Then any kind of criticism is demonized, right? Now, in any mature democracy, right, whether it's a debate within the SPD in Germany, whether it's a debate within, I don't know, Democratic Party or even the Bernie movement in the US, whether it's a movement within the labor movement in the UK or whatever, legitimate yan. I mean, you can stand for good governance. You can stand against trapoism, and at the same time, you also can openly ask some questions or even raise some critique. No, hindi bashing, but critique of like, So, what I'm saying here is that minsan nahirapan tayo magkaroon ng mature, forward-looking, and I would say even functional and constructive discussion because ang nagiging attitude kasi ng tao dito is dahil etong tao na to ay lumalaban sa lahat ng trapos, parang wala tayong karapatan to say, gets mo? And then obviously, I know also, early this year, I don't know, some people didn't reply to me on my messages, baka galit pa sila or whatever. And then like, I don't know, 12 people unfriended us or whatever. And then unfollowed me on Twitter or whatever, like whatever, right? Anyway, is when I raised some issue about, and it was an emotional intervention about, the meeting with Sara Duterte and like, not a 2 minute, not just a hi, hello, but, like a, 30, 45 minutes, whatever. We don't know the details, whatever. Anyway, having said all of those things, I am always fair and I give credit where credit is due. So if you look at it overall, Leni Robredo has been really the comeback queen. I mean, she has done an incredible job, and she's not even running for a national position. She doesn't occupy a national position. Hindi na siya, well, at least technically, hindi siya yung leader of opposition. That should technically belong to Risa Hontiveros, that position. And yet, if you look at Leni Robredo, grabe, grabe. Level A, halos lahat ng mga important political figures, whether it's sige na nga, Robin Hood Padilla, right? Whether it's Tulfo, whether it's Bong Revilla, whether it's like the former DILG secretaries, ano yung kalaban ng kriminal, mga, whether it's BBM, like whether it's Sara, lahat sila gusto nila makipag-meet sa kanya, which tells you, you know, Leni Robredo is still a major figure. But more important than that, it's not just a meeting, with all of these politicos, which just affirms the centrality and importance and enduring appeal of Leni Robredo. For me, I mean, wow. I mean, how can you not appreciate what Leni was doing nung nagkaroon tayo ng baha? Nagkaroon tayo ng natural disaster sa Bicol the other month. I mean, look at what Leni was doing. That's genuine leadership. That's progressive leadership. That's you know what I'm saying? Like, grabe si Lenny mismo doon, like going there, talagang getting submerged in the water, helping people, putting herself on the front. And alam mo naman, yung mga pictures na nakita mo sa kanya, hindi talaga yun. Kasi, alam mo, obvious naman talaga ka, ano yun eh. Kung scripted yan, medyo may glamour shot pa, ganun. Hindi, talaga makita mo, pagod si Lenny, she's helping through darkness, through storm and everything like that. So, I think that reminded a lot of people na bakit si Leni Robredo, ay daming tao nagmamahal sa kanya. Bakit si Leni Robredo ay simbolo ng good governance sa Pilipinas. Bakit siya naging simbolo ng pag-asa sa marami sa ating mga kababayan. So that's where I'm fair. I can have some tactical disagreements. I can have some issues about campaign, communications, whatever. Or sometimes I felt she should have been more aggressive, should assertive, should more open, whatever. But in fairness, I mean, she brings something to the table that is almost entirely unique to her, unlike anyone else. Not only the opposition, I would say anyone else in mainstream Philippine politics. And kudos to Ma'am Leni for that. And yung kanyang angat buhay, in many ways, again, ay naging simbolo din ng progressive civil society, right? And who knows, could be part of something even bigger if, and this is not impossibility, if magkakaroon ng clamor ulit for Leni Robredo to run. And last time I checked, Leni is consistently number 3 in all pre-election surveys for 2028. Yes, a distant third from both Tulfo and Sara. But what if Sara doesn't run? What if Tulfo doesn't run? Or what if Sara and Tulfo run, but by that time, the tide has shifted because Leni by this time is a mayor of Naga. By this time, she has a couple of years in Naga and has reestablished herself as the embodiment of the kind of governance, world-class, world-renowned governance that Jesse Robredo stood for. So tignan natin yan, guys. So I think in that sense, Leni Robredo absolutely was the comeback queen of 2024. And I'm not saying this, to just impress people. No, I don't need to pander to any side. I'm sorry, guys. If there's one thing consistent about what we have been doing over the past 5-6 years, we have pissed off many people from different sides, but we have also gained supporters and followers from all sides, because alam naman nila kung totoong may pagmamahal ka sa bayan, kung totoo yung analysis mo, inevitable talaga marami kang babanggain from different sides. But for me, at the end of the day, it's about giving credit where credit is due. It's about what you symbolize and what you represent. It's about what you bring out in your people. It's about what kind of leadership and vision you put on the table. It's about what kind of feelings, right? You inspire in your. Is it a feeling of ubusin na yan, or is it a feeling of ayusin natin yung ating bansa? Kawawa naman Pilipinas, pero kailangan tayo ng Pilipinas, or may pag-asa ng Pilipinas. Like that kind of inspirational leadership, I think is something that we have to always appreciate. And in many ways, guys, you have to give it to both Bam Aquino, Leni, and the whole people behind it. The pink movement is unprecedented. We haven't had anything like this in contemporary Philippine history. Millions of people coming out, paying for themselves. Hindi ito hakot. Hindi ito yung binayaran ng tao. Hindi ito mga tao were bussed in. No, these are people who were there. I saw it with my own eyes. Not once, but multiple times. I saw with my own eyes hundreds of thousands of people coming out in support of Leni Robredo. You can find even the live stream we did in a couple of them. Now, obviously, some of the live did not push through that much kasi sa daming tao nandun, yung bandwidth minsan na hindi gumagana, and sometimes for security reasons there's certain areas para lang there's a security from drone or whatever, walang signal. But to the degree that you can remember, diba, some of the first lives we did on the street we did were from Pasig, from Roas Boulevard, from Makati. So at least three major pink movement rallies ay napuntahan natin last year. I also attended, of course, yung meeting de avance ng Unity. And I wrote about the observations about that. You can check it out again, and probably that's an observation I'll go back and back again too. So where are we now? So for me, I think we have entered the phase of correction and a phase of um, new connections, and also a new phase of new possibilities. Correction in the sense that I think nagkakaroon ng medyo namulat ang tao na hindi porket may Marcos yan ay golden era na tayo, di ba? Oh, hindi ko na sasabihin na ano. And speaking of budol, bago magsabi yung mga ka-DDS natin na budol si BBM, pag-usapan naman natin. I think marami tao rin, alam na rin nila kung ano yung mga kabudulan ng ginawa ng mga ni Digong nung panahon na presidente siya. Di ba? As more than one person put it, the whole drug war was budol. The whole promise of in 6 months Philippines will be crime free was budol, right? Oh, and a lot of other things we can have a long conversation about. I think everyone knows about it, right? As in like Mary Grace Piato's level of budol, right? So I think at least nagkaroon ng correction. Nagkaroon ng medyo namulat yung mga ibang... I mean, there will always be some minority or even a small plurality who will unfortunately, yun na yan di ba? Solid But I think nakikita din natin 20% drop in Visayas, 13% drop in Mindanao, whatever. And ang baba ng numbers ni Sara Duterte sa NCR, sa Luzon. Ay, good luck dito sa amin sa Northern Luzon. That tells you that talagang medyo namulat din ang tao doon sa mga, the Dutertismo after all was more budol than transformative change. And with that, I think there's now room for others to come in and fill in the vacuum, right? Fill in the vacuum. So the Tulfos are doing it that in their own ways, but Tulfos maybe just enjoying their essentially the fruits of their political novelty, although they're not a novelty in terms of media and other things, journalism, but let's see, especially once tatlo na yung Tulfos sa Senado, who knows, right? At the same time, I think, and this is the last part I want to discuss this, mahirap talaga kasi maging liberal at progressive sa panahon ngayon right? Kasi kung liberal and progressive ka, ikaw ay supporter ng institution. Ikaw ay supporter ng rule of law. Ikaw ang supporter of long-term gradual change. And if there's one thing that is so hard to sell to people nowadays is gradual change. Dahil sobrang konti ang tiwalang tao sa mga institution ngayon, dahil sobrang konti ang attention span ng tao ngayon, dahil sobrang konti ang patience ng tao ngayon, and dahil nowadays, sobrang dali mang budol. I mean, sobrang dali namang budol nowadays, unfortunately, because, dahil sa social media. Dahil sa algorithm. Dahil sa lahat ng mga platforms, let's not, talk about Bitcoin. You get what I'm saying, right? It's so easy to exaggerate things nowadays because there's so many ways to make false budol stuff trending. Sobrang dali mag-trending ng false budol stuff. There was a study by MIT more than 6 years ago that showed that, for instance, fake budul stuff, are shared 4 times faster than truthful stuff, right? Unfortunately, mas baenta ang budul nowadays because of the, let's just call it, the information ecosystem we find ourselves in, right? Even the mainstream media and all of it is adjusting, unfortunately, and everything is clickbait now. So budul clickbait people are having a great moment. And this is where also like dun sa mga ibang colleagues natin, friends natin na nagfi-feeling, right? If you're not really doing anything to reach out, right? If you're basically irrelevant in the public space, just keep just keep it to yourself, right? Because ang hirap nowadays to get the message across. Because there's this ocean of budul and ocean of disinformation, a cesspool of nonsense. And to break through that, it's so hard, guys. It's so difficult. It's so difficult. So kung minsan medyo nagkakengkoy tayo, nag-apate-pate, whatever tayo, that's just our way of just a little bit, hey, baka naman, di ba? We're like in the agora, baka naman, di ba? So that's why it's very hard to be a progressive liberal nowadays, because you're fundamentally talking about rational discourse, evidence-based discourse. You're talking about slow reforms, etc. But having said that, ako naniniwala pa rin ako na may pag-asa pa rin mga progressive and liberals if they know how to tap into the sentiments of the moment. And the sentiments of the moment is anti-establishment. So I think unang-una, dapat tanggapin ng lahat ng mga liberals na talaga nagkaroon ng massive failure of liberalism. Not liberalism as an ideology, but liberalism as a political project. Whether ito yung economic globalization, new liberalism, blah, blah, blah. Essentially, all of this focus on more freedoms, but not much in terms of, healthcare, welfare, social justice, all of those basic things. Talagang medyo laos ng liberalism. So it has to be upgraded and made more relevant for our moment. There has to be a more radical tinge to it. There has to be more decisiveness to liberal progressive politics. There has to be charisma. A charisma that works. I mean, like, kaya idol ko yung mga katulad nila Zelensky and Alexei Navalny from a perspective of how good they are in terms of leveraging even TikTok, right, to push their message, right? These were men in their 40s who were using TikTok to get the message across. That's the level of dexterity they brought to the table, right? Zelensky up against the whole Kremlin. And yes, China and who knows what. Propaganda machinery did very, very well. Alexei Navalny, he risked his life and eventually was martyred for it. So for me, those figures who in many ways stood for liberalism and progressivism should be the models for how to fight for a better future, essentially. Because sa totoo lang, walang mangyayari sa atin na maganda kung puro maniwala lang tayo sa mga political will lang ng mga tao. Ang taas ng chance na mabudol tayo. Ilan beses tayo nabudol sa ating kasaysayan nung nilagay natin lahat ng tiwala natin sa isang tao lang. Over and over again, naging corrupt ng mga tao yan or lumabas yung pagka-corrupt nila. Over and over again, lumabas yung pagka-abusive nila or talagang abusive sila to begin with. Dangerous po yan. Dangerous po talaga yan. At the same time, we cannot ignore the fact that our institutions have been failing. So what you need are strong figures who also reform institutions. Strong figures who admit that institutions are weak, but they will fix those institutions and make sure na hindi lang kayo dapat umasa sa isang tao or sa political will nila, na down the road, you can rely on strong institutions to take care of things. Whether this is rule of law, whether it's healthcare, whether it's PhilHealth, many things that we can talk, defense, national defense, right? A lot of those things. So, unfortunately, in an era whereby the budul kings and queens have a lot of avenues for influence operations and for spreading their wings, kailangan talaga ng radical rethinking of tactics by liberals and progressives, right? And I think it is all good, to stand for good governance. Absolutely. It's all good to stand for decency, although not in a sanctimonious, self-righteous way. But it's also very important to be relatable. It's very important to know how to use humor, dark humor or not so dark humor, right? It's also very important to learn not to take yourself too seriously, right? I take my work seriously. I do take my work seriously, whether it's my academic work, my journalistic work, even this work, right? I take it seriously. But I always remind myself, Richard, don't take yourself too seriously, right? Don't say like, oh, I'm an intellectual. I've written for all these great publications. I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that. Oh shit. You do that, you're gonna be a loser, right? You're weak if you're thinking like that. You're weak. Because if you're really smart, if you're really good, you're willing to be trolled, you're willing to be mocked or whatever like that, and you're willing to be versatile or experiment with versatility. Now, alam ko may mga losers dyan na say, oh, yung moves mo ay hindi ganun kaganda or yung kick mo ay hindi ganun kalakas. Parang, sige, you seriously want... Let's do a kicking contest, like legit. I'll be in my black belt and all. Let's go, right? You really want to go for dancing and all? No, but kidding aside, we have to be kenkoy. We have to be kenkoy. We have to be able to, to be, open to be bashed or trolled. It's okay. So what? So what? Because if you're really good or you really represent something or if you're really fighting for something good, who cares about a few bashers here or trolls here or anything like that, right? Now, dun sa mga iba na walang ibang talent talaga, hindi ko nakasalanan. Sorry talaga, right? All right. Yan naman tayo. But you get what I'm saying, right? Yeah, you have to be a bit balahura also here and there. Hindi pwede mahina. Hindi pwede diffident. Honestly, diffidence gets you nowhere nowadays. You have to fight, fight, fight. You know, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. You know, like, I never believe it's the greatest. But sometimes, yung pagka-shameless niya in terms of pushing with what he believes in, pwedeng gamitin yan for the good reasons. Ah. You know, there's certain tactics that you see with Donald Trump and all that's like, you know, so we can learn a few things from populists in terms of their tactics, but use it for good ends, for good values and strategy. And as you know, as I said, if the right wingers are learning from Gramsci, like Meloni in the case of Italia, why shouldn't we also learn a little bit in terms of balahura and relatability and kenkoiness and whatever from the other side, right? Politics is the art of innovation. It's about leveling up. It's about going with the times, right? It's about appealing to as many people as possible, right? So this is what we do. This is what. Okay, I'll behave na myself. I'll behave na myself. Come on, guys, stop doing that. But alam mo, napaka-itsosero talaga mga tao. Ah. Ay, naku, napaka-itsosero talagang tao. Ah. I don't know. Honestly, oh, eto na yung last part. Ah. Okay, since medyo konting balahuran naman. No, 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 honestly. As I said, I think I was very clear on the record. The only rival I recognize is Lelo Claude, and he's not even really a rival. He's like a friend. He's like a friendly rivalry, right? I don't consider anyone else a rival in this country, right? Honestly, and I don't mean it in an arrogant way. I just mean like, like, I'm not like a journalist. Like I don't do this as a journalism. And you want to see more journalism of me? Read my Philippine Daily Inquirer. Go and watch my One News TV. But what we do here is different. It's podcasting, it's political punditry, it's sometimes also academic discussion, as we had with Vicente Rafael, with Walden Bello, and some of these leading Filipino social scientists and professors and thinkers. So no, I mean, so guys, okay, as I said, I'm open to collaborate with anyone else. It's end of the year na, let's not make an issue of that. I saw na naman kanina naman some people are making issue. Like, a couple of a day ago, someone asked me, bakit ngayon? Like, come on, guys, all right? Um, Huwag kayong mag-echosera. I think all of us are doing great here in a sense that at least ngayon, hindi lang mga bayaran na trolls, alright, hindi lang yung mga walang yang mga fake news peddlers ay nandyan sa YouTube and mga red. At least the good news is that there are a couple of different options there for you to go to. Now, if you want the standard serious journalism stuff, you know who to go to, right? Now, I have that serious standard stuff. Go to Philippine One News. But if you want something a little bit kenkoy, kanchawan, ganon, come here. That's where you're gonna get it. So that's why I don't even compare myself to other vloggers in the Philippines or even in the US. I mean, there are a couple of people who try to who are like so there. I heard like the two or three names, big names in US and India that they said similar in style nila sa akin. Na medyo, yung minsan medyo pakyut, minsan medyo balahura, minsan seryoso. Yeah, okay, whatever. But, I don't know. But so we're trying to do something different and unique here. And it's an experimentation. It's an innovation, right? Kung titignan niyo how I did things 2 years ago during 2021, 2022 elections, different from what we're doing now. And let's see how this thing evolves. But what I'm saying here is that this is not a journalistic podcasting, okay? I'm not here to just interview people or ask questions. I have ideas and opinions which come from my works, academic works, my body of works, and the things I'm working on. So, there's no point in comparing me to anyone else, right? And yeah, I'm open to collaboration whatsoever. So, wag na tayo chisera, okay? Let's promote, I won't even say healthy competition. I said, let's just promote, let's go a little bit Mao Zedong about it. The blossoming of 1,000 flowers, right? Let's just let 1,000 different experiments blossom and take it from there. Take it from there. Take it from there, right? So we have a couple of hundreds of thousands of followers online on major platforms from Facebook to YouTube and all of that. It sounds big, but actually it's not, right? So that means there's a huge number na ating mga kababayan na hindi pa natin na-reach. So please, the last thing I want to ask you guys is spread the message. Tell people you want a kind of a balahura, good balahura with the puso edition. Come here, right? You want informative stuff. Come here. And if you go to my YouTube page, my goodness, I mean, we have serious interviews with people who are gonna run the world in the coming months. We have interviews with leading professors and thinkers in the world. And then we have, the usual Ronald Llama stuff and the usual punditry and all of that. So we try to bring it all for you. And it's not SM or 7-Eleven, right? We try also to do it at the highest level. So thank you so much for being patient with some of our antics and some of our, balahura moments. But there's a reason behind what we're doing. Because, I'm looking at the numbers, I'm looking at reception, I'm looking at what people are saying, and at the same time, I'm looking at what's needed, what should be done, what should be transmitted. And then once in a while, syempre pagod tayo, magkakalat ka talaga minsan once in a while. But as much as possible, we try to keep this as serious as possible or anything like that. All right. So thank you so much again. Blessed holidays to you guys. Merry Christmas. Hopefully we'll have an RRM tomorrow, and then on Monday or so, either we'll have it with Justice Carpio also, or again to talk about budget issues. Kailangan natin pag-usapan talaga itong budget ni BBM. Maraming mga controversial na bagay yan pag-usapan natin. And we're hoping to also have back Ronald with Walden Bello to have a little bit more of a progressive angle discussion. And I'll be proud. I don't think any other podcast in the country does those kinds of things we do, right? Deep discussions about Antonio Gramsci, about Hegel, about Marx. Deep discussions about latest in political theory. Deep discussions about critical, not only critical theory, but like about essentially moments in our history that created path dependencies, right? Critical junctures, conjunctural and contingent factors that explain things. So that's what we are trying to do here dito sa show natin. And at the same time, of course, you're free to also check sometimes, although magiging conscious na ako ngayon sa copyright and all, you can check also some of the copies of my interviews with the leading media outlets in the world: CNN International, BBC, Deutsche Welle, interviews with Amanpour, interviews with Zakaria, all of those, Farid Zakaria. You can find those interviews also on Al Jazeera, among others, also on my channel, YouTube channel. All right. Thank you very much, guys. And yes, of course, very importantly, dito rin, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, how many podcasts here in the Philippines talk about industrial policy? You tell me, how many of them talk about trade and industrial policy, right? I think we had already 10 episodes on industrial and trade policy here, right? And talking to people from Sunny Africa to Walden Bello to Lele Claudio, people from different backgrounds, economics, sociology, history, among other things. So this is what also we do on this podcast. We talk about semiconductors. We talk about industrial policy. We talk about how the Philippines can make the most out of this new era of supply chain decoupling and de-risking. No offense, I don't see this on any other comparable podcast here in the Philippines. I see that a lot abroad. So again, we completely approach things differently. So there's no point in comparing us to anyone else. All right. Thank you very much. God bless, and talk to you soon. Salamat. Thank you for stickers, for stars, and support. We really, really appreciate it. Again, of course, as you know, we're hoping also to have in-person interviews, not only with politicos, but also with our usual guests, katulad ng ginawa natin with Justice Carpio, among other things. Obviously, hindi libre mga yan. We have to get videographer and everything like that. So thank you so much for your support, because your support makes those things possible, makes it sustainable, right? Because we're looking at sustainability here. Not because only I'm an Ilocano, because I'm I look at numbers, right? Because hindi tayo katulad ng ibang konyo, nagtatapon ng pera ng 1-2 milyon kasi rich si daddy or si tita ganyan. Wala tayong sponsors, wala tayong supporters, right? So it's your support that has enabled us to put some of the basic logistics together. How I wish, sooner than later, we can have a whole, set up like our own media company foundation kind of link, kind of like anti-corruption foundation of Alexei Navalny. I would love to have something like that one day where I can do like that, but we're not there yet. God willing, one day we'll get there. But in the meantime, it is your support that has made whatever little that we're putting together possible. And I would say little, not in terms of substance, but little in terms of production value. So sorry if wala tayong 100% production value yet. But we have a couple of very high, I think decent, not very high, but decent, pretty decent production value stuff. Now, if you want to see legit stuff, please watch View from Manila on One News. Libre lahat ng mga episode na lumabas. And this year, we got to talk to 4, 5, 6 different experts from Washington, D.C., from Hawaii, from top think tanks in the United States. We had ambassadors, including ambassador of the European Union with us to talk about EU, ASEAN, Trump relations. So check out all of those things. We have people who are experts on Singapore, people who are experts on Vietnam, people who are experts on Southeast Asia and ASEAN, on China. So all of those things, you can also check those things out. All right? Thank you very much. God bless, and talk to you soon.